Hey everyone, this is the weekly Decomposition Stakeholders Stand-Up Wednesday, May 18th. And I have the first item. So just an update on progress. The first dry run on staging was conducted this past Monday. That went pretty smoothly. There were some valuable insights gained and follow-ups are being worked on. There's a second dry run scheduled for Monday, May 23rd in APAC hours. So we'll have to adjust the timeline on phase 7 accordingly. But yeah, that's it's encouraging to see all the collaboration that's been going on there. So yeah, thanks for everyone for continuing to support the rollout planning. Any comments on the dry runs before we go on? Okay. Yeah, we had some discussion in the sharding group sync earlier, and there were kind of like 3 actions that we just wanted to, or items for consideration that we wanted to bring to this meeting. So one is just to make sure that we are all in agreement about a rollback strategy. There is, and we may want to link to the thread in Slack where kind of the updated strategy is discussed. But I think to summarize, there's some discussion now about instead of using a second CI cluster, essentially rolling back by pointing reads to the main cluster. So kind of like rolling back phase 3, but then keeping phase 4 in place. So still keeping connections going through the PG bouncer CI, but pointed to the main cluster. And so, and I think Dylan is working on a draft MR with those configuration changes. So that's kind of being seen right now as a potentially simpler rollback strategy. And I don't think there's been any major disagreement on that, but I think we just need to, as that plan gets developed, just make sure everyone's aligned on it. Second point is this kind of came up today. We need to decide if we want to change how replication is handled, specifically whether we need a replication slot or not. And so I think this is something where hopefully, I don't know, we can decide on who the DRI is for this, because I think there's maybe some opinions. I think Nikolai was advocating for replication slots. And then I think on the other side, it's like, okay, well, that's maybe to be extra safe during this time until we actually fail over to the CI cluster, but then all that change would go away anyways. And so I think there's kind of this trade-off between whether we want to implement this replication slot, but that could further delay the decomposition rollout, or whether we want to just kind of continue as in the current state and continue moving forward. So yeah, I'm not sure who the DRI necessarily is on that decision, but I think that's something we wanted to bring to this meeting and see what everyone thought.
I guess maybe one question I have is that, does that impact kind of our resulting approach to, for example, the having delayed replica information, the backup approach, both the GCP backup approach as well as the AWS Vault backup approach? I think the intent is that we should end up with all of those capabilities just like we have today with the main cluster. And so it would be good to know if this impacts or anything else impacts like the end result of having all those capabilities.
I realize I joined late and I apologize. So is this specifically a question regarding the replication slot versus not replication slot?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. So I'm not sure if it's specifically related to that. I think in seeing the discussion about the replication slot, it wasn't clear to me whether or not.
I think that was a subtopic, Steve, of if we're just reverting to like phase 4, then we're not replicating to another cluster. Sorry, I'm talking with my mouth full. So, but that replicating to a backup cluster, if we're doing that, we needed to decide on the solution of how we would replicate to the backout strategy cluster. But if we're not going to do that and we just revert reads like Nick was saying, then the replication slot discussion is kind of moot.
Okay, all right. I mean, maybe what I'm bringing up is a separate topic and potentially is something that maybe we should walk back and just ensure that we're ending up with the same capabilities at the end. So, I mean, today with, the given cluster, there's an existing capability for delayed replica. There's existing capabilities for restores from different backups, both directly in GCP and also the immutable vault backups that are in AWS. We just wouldn't want to, end up a couple months in the future with the need to do restore and to then discover that for all the CI data, we don't have consistency with the rest of the database. So.
Yeah, so I think, Nick, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I don't know all of the details here, but my understanding was that the CI cluster was provisioned providing the same capabilities as for the main cluster. So I think data is backed up in a similar way. So these capabilities should be there. I have not provisioned it myself, so I can't really say if that is factually the case, but I believe that was the intent.
That's the case.
Is the case, yeah.
That's the case. When we were provisioning all this, we copied exactly what's happening with the main cluster.
Yes. So let's say the capabilities should be the same. However, and this is, I think, an important thing to be aware of as we've started thinking about the rollback in case something goes wrong. I think what is the case now is that in the future, rather than having a single cluster, we now have 2 clusters. They have different state. So in case one of those, let's say, goes down in a few months, right, and we will have to manage a situation where we have to resolve these consistency challenges between these 2 databases in a similar-ish way that we would have in case we roll back. So I think, there's potential sequence bumping, like ID buffering and whatnot going on that the engineers are discussing. So I don't think it is fair to say that there won't be any additional complexity in case of a restore, just because we now have 2 databases and we have to account for that. But I think the base capabilities should be there.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, the complexity I definitely get. I just don't want to be in a situation where, again, we'll be in a complex situation. I just don't want to be in a situation where we don't actually have the data.
I think the data should be there, as Kennedy said.
I think, Ken, if one additional follow-up you could do is just to validate the vault backup, because that is, unless you recall for sure that we have, and we've got an issue tracking the work that InfraSec would have done on that. Like nobody in infrastructure has access to that vault infrastructure deliberately. We're prevented from that as by design. And so, there are pipelines and access and everything that InfraSec would have had to set up in order to accomplish that.
Yep, the general backup, specifically on the vault on the InfoSec side, that one we might not have done, but the general capabilities of backup and restoring, that one that we currently do, we already have that one in place. If we are sending extra one to InfoSec, then that's something I can definitely verify and confirm today. To this, yes.
Cool. I mean, it doesn't have to be done today, but I mean, we need to, when we move forward, that needs to be part of the solution. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think for this, kind of decision point on item number 2, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is we're kind of talking about this period between now and when we actually complete phase 7. And I think the concern there is, so on one hand, there was in an issue some advice from Nikolay, our Postgres consultant, that said, hey, we he really thinks we should have a replication slot, because if certain things happen, we could have certain things happen right now with the CI cluster replicating from main. We could have some performance degradation. So we're kind of, there's some risk there in not having it. And then I think on the other side of that argument, debate, there's this thought that, okay, well, that might help, but at the same time, like, we're kind of in this state for maybe a little over a month. If we do this, we'll have to, if we put in place the replication slot, we'll have to maybe go back and re-execute a bunch of tests and kind of replan things, and that could further push back the decomposition effort. And then I think the other point to that was that we already have, if something does happen, like we potentially lose wall or something like that, there's already a plan in place to recover that. And so the thought was that may just, going down this path of adding the replication slot at this point may just be extra work for something that's not really for a state that's really only going to be there for another month and a half, hopefully. So I think,
and also the replication slot looks like it's a temporary thing. And once the phase 7 deployment is complete, this thing will go away. We don't need it at all. So basically this is for the next month, 1.5 months, a solution for 1.5 months. So this is a trade-off of risk taking. What kind of risks we want to take?
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of the question we wanted to pose here is who's kind of who's the DRI for I guess weighing that trade-off and making that call. I'm not sure. Yeah, I certainly don't feel qualified to.
Yeah, and I mean I think at least to add my even less qualified opinion here is like, this is essentially a question, is like, can we live with the status quo for some time longer, despite Nikolay raising concerns that it may create a problem? I have no way of knowing how bad this is, right? It's just if we need to fix this first, it may create other things that we then need to mitigate. That's, I think, the question that we just need to answer.
So I guess one thing around this, I'm kind of reading through the description, and I hear that there's a desire for there to be like a DRI assignment for this decision here, and it kind of sounds unclear to me like who that should be. So if the question is that we're all reading this and think that there needs to be some kind of like higher level business risk decision made, I think what we need is like the comment from Nikolay is written at a level in which it's not ready for that business risk decision. Like, I can't read this and figure out like what the business risk is in order to take on that decision and be the DRI, which I would be happy to do, but we would need some kind of additional enhancement of this before I'd be able to do that. So, but if that's not what we're asking for, and there's somebody else on here who fully is kind of rooted in the details of this and comfortable being the DRI for the decision, that's fine as well. I don't want to you know, I don't want to like stick my nose in, but it sounds like there's an ask here for somebody to be a DRI.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
first. Go ahead, Fabian.
I think, Steve, you're quite right, because I think I have the same question as you. I don't know how, like, if this is something I even need to worry about. And I think this needs a technical assessment first, saying like, yes, this is a severe business risk, or no, actually we are okay, right? And then, you know, but as it stands, it's been there for 2 weeks. I think we've seen it now for the first time. At least I've seen it today for the first time. And so I think my ask would be, at least from the infrastructure side, somebody who is sort of knowledgeable enough to say like, Nikolai is right, this is a risk, and I recommend we do something because of that. And I think none of the team members in the sharding group that are from a development perspective have enough knowledge to do that. It may actually be something where Jose or someone else, you know, can say like, this is actually okay, but I don't know. And I think that's where we need some clarification.
Yeah. I would suggest maybe first step, we need a DRI to write up assessment or write up the information that can support evaluating the business impact here. Basically take Nick's input and also other inputs like what it will be impacting the rollout process, so that you know, either Steve or a combined you know, leadership have sufficient information to evaluate the business risk, then make a call there after that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Can we have the like Ken and Dave, can we have the DBREs basically provide some enhanced kind of business risk assessment of this? And then if it's about accepting or not accepting a business risk, I'm happy to do that. I just don't understand what it is at this time.
That makes sense. I feel like I would lean on a tech lead, usually, like in this case, Jose, to translate Nick to that next level for what you're looking for. So I don't know how you feel about that, Ken, but I know Raphael had brought some of this up, so I can also ask him to do it. I just.
Yes. 8 of them should be able to do this. I can work with Jose during my time, and then we check in with also Raphael. I would also like to hear. I know Jerry is not here, but Jerry's opinion also on this one, given that he's.
Sorry, I guess I lean towards the Jerry or Jose. They're our staff and our DE, so they're the ones that should be translating that.
All right, then I will take it up with Jose, and then we will try have it in a way that he can be evaluated for risk assessment and decision making.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And then, yeah, just the third point here, which I think is kind of related to this specific decision we're talking about. I think just a general discussion about, yeah, these changes that are maybe where there are multiple viewpoints that are viewed as more impactful, that there's a process to review and agree upon them. I don't know if Fabian or Chun, you had any more to say on that point as it came up in our last chat.
Yeah, I can quickly speak to this. I think there was a little bit of a concern. We're just trying to be transparent and highlight that we're making changes in the DB integration environment, which is not staging nor production. And I think the desire here is to ensure that if changes are being made, that, you know, before they get applied in other environments, you know, we have agreement that it's a good idea, they get reviewed, and want to make sure that that process is also respected to avoid any, you know, like upsets in it. That was just something that came up, I think, today. So essentially, maybe my question is like, is it normal that before changes are being made to staging and production that things get reviewed before they get merged, because then maybe the easiest thing here is to say, if you intend to make a
standard change
change
process should have a change plan, and does it go in staging, and all change plans have to have 2 sets of eyes. So
yeah, because
you
then
know,
I
for
think
this, maybe that's a little broader, but then the 2 sets of eyes also needs to include the plan. So maybe we need to communicate that out, but in general, everything gets sets of
so I
eyes.
think
And I
maybe
would
this
think
is
that
just
the team members on this would use somebody inside the team as a second set of eyes.
yeah. So your recommendation Dave, is just to follow up on the usual change process.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Cool.
All right. Yeah, and I have our standing item here for any updates on the DBOS upgrade timing. Yeah, do we have any updates?
Sorry, just to go back to the bullet point 2. So Ken, you will be coordinating that efforts. Do we, Nick and Fabian, do we have a timeline in mind that we need this decision to be made? I mean,
What decision?
I mean,
the replication slot.
replication. Whether we need it. I mean, what's the timeline we need the decision so that we can coordinate when we need to need this information assembled for leaders to evaluate the business risk.
I think if we could evaluate that, you know, by the end of this week or by the beginning of next week, I think would be useful. I think there's this may be a little bit of a complication. It's like, I think this is less severe if we don't have to provision a second CI cluster in staging and production, because then we wouldn't have to decide if we add a replication slot or not, right? It becomes a keep the status quo, yes or not. So I would hope that we can decide on the rollback strategy within a day or 2. And we should probably aim to get a risk assessment of some kind done by Monday, I'd say at the latest. That feels like enough time to at least take a look.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not looking for something super elaborate, right? I think
Yeah.
similar to Steve, I think we're just looking for is this fine, right? Can we continue to do this, or is it going to be a real blocker?
Cool. And Ken, hope that helps, you know, sort out the rough timeline. So maybe early next week, let's say next Monday, we have some kind, you know, the write-up, a summary of the concerns so that the leaders have the information to evaluate business impacts and then make decision.
Yes, that's clear for me. I think we should be able to get an answers by early next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. And then, yeah, I saw Dave, you provide an update on the OS upgrade.
Yeah, sorry you were talking, so Ken, hopefully I didn't steal your thunder there, but I was just going to say that OS upgrade, from what I've seen on updates, is still on track to be ready at end of June, but they obviously haven't made any announcements for maintenance windows or anything. So, but I've everybody on, you know, Rafael and Gonzalo and Marcel, everybody I've talked to, we've said, you know, the assumption is still we're doing decomposition phase 7 rollout first. I would note we do need to get on that maintenance window announcement soon, though.
At this point, I think it will make sense for us from the team perspective discussing. We do know that the composition will have to go fast before the OS upgrade anyway. So we can start working around communication on that.
Cool. And I'm host of the info group conversation that's coming up in 5 minutes. So I'm going to drop and go make sure the live stream and stuff is ready to go.
I think we're about time anyways. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks you. Bye-bye.